This is the image they tried to bury before the cameras could catch it. A locked conference room on the third floor of the Republican National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C. Armed Capitol Police stationed at both ends of the hallway. Staff ordered to surrender their phones at the door. No aides, no press, no president. As of 11:47 a.m. this morning, Wednesday, March 4th, 2026, at least 14 senior Republican senators and 22 House members have entered that room for what sources are calling the most significant closed-door meeting in the party's modern history. For the first time since Watergate, the Republican leadership is holding an emergency internal summit specifically designed to exclude a sitting president of their own party. Donald Trump was not invited. Donald Trump was not informed. Donald Trump, according to 3 sources inside the West Wing, only learned about this meeting from a Fox News chyron 17 minutes after it began. The man who remade the Republican Party in his image, who demanded absolute loyalty for a decade, who purged every dissenter and punished every critic, is now locked out of his own house. We are talking about Senate Minority Leader John Thune. We are talking about House Speaker Mike Johnson. We are talking about the chairs of the Armed Services, Finance, and Intelligence Committees. We are talking about the power brokers who write the legislation, control the fundraising apparatus, and hold the keys to the 2028 nomination. And they are meeting without him. Sources inside the RNC describe the atmosphere as funereal. This is not a policy discussion. This is not a strategy session for the midterms. According to a leaked text message obtained by Politico, one senior senator wrote to a colleague at 9:14 a.m. this morning, "We are past the point of no return. The ship is sinking and the captain is drilling holes in the hull." In this special report, we are going to break down exactly what triggered this revolt. We are going to reveal the 5 simultaneous crises that made this meeting inevitable. We are going to explain the financial catastrophe that has gutted Republican donor confidence. And we are going to answer the most dangerous question in American politics right now. Is the Republican Party preparing to publicly abandon Donald Trump while he still holds the presidency? Buckle up. The party of Lincoln is eating itself alive. To understand why 14 senators walked into that room this morning, you have to understand the cascade of disasters that hit the Republican Party over the last 72 hours. It starts with money. The Republican National Committee's February fundraising numbers leaked on Monday evening, and they are catastrophic. Total donations for the month, $11.2 million. That is a 64% decline from February 2025. The Democratic National Committee, by comparison, raised $43.8 million in the same period. The ratio is nearly 4-to-1. But here is the number that sent shockwaves through the donor class. Of the RNC's top 100 donors from the 2024 cycle, the so-called bundlers who each raised more than $500,000, 73 have not written a single check in 2026, not $1. Sources at the RNC's finance division say the phones have gone dead. The mega donors, the hedge fund managers, the real estate titans, the tech billionaires who bankrolled Trump's victory 18 months ago have collectively decided to sit on their wallets. The reason, according to multiple sources familiar with the donor conversations, is the Japan crisis. The ongoing global financial instability triggered by the Tokyo bond market collapse has wiped an estimated $4.7 trillion from American household wealth since December. The S&P 500 is down 23% from its peak. The NASDAQ has entered official bear market territory, down 31%. Retirement accounts, the 401ks, and pensions that Republican voters over 55 depend on have hemorrhaged value. The average American retiree has lost approximately $47,000 in portfolio value in the last 90 days. And the president's response has been, according to one donor who spoke on condition of anonymity, incoherent, self-serving, and disconnected from reality. But the financial collapse is only the first domino. The second crisis is the polling apocalypse. Internal Republican polling, conducted by the party's own research firm and shared with leadership last Friday, shows numbers that sources describe as extinction level. The president's approval rating among registered voters stands at 31%. Among independents, it has cratered to 22%. But here is what nobody is talking about. The internal polling tested something called generic congressional ballot with presidential association, which measures how voters feel about Republican candidates specifically because of their connection to the president. The result, Republican candidates who are perceived as close to Trump are running an average of 11.4 points behind their Democratic opponents in swing districts. That number is worse than 2018. It is worse than 2006. It is, according to the pollster's own memo, consistent with a wipeout of historic proportions in November. The memo was marked confidential. It was distributed to fewer than 20 people. And yet within 48 hours, every major Republican donor had a copy. That is how you know the party is leaking. That is how you know the knives are out. The third crisis, and this is the one that reportedly pushed the leadership over the edge, is the Greenland debacle. The president's attempt to acquire Greenland, which we covered extensively in previous reports, has collapsed into an international embarrassment. The Danish government formally recalled its ambassador to the United States last Thursday. NATO allies issued a joint statement, unprecedented in the alliance's 77-year history, expressing grave concern about American territorial ambitions toward a member state's sovereign territory. The estimated cost of the Greenland initiative, including the military repositioning, the diplomatic infrastructure, and the corporate incentive packages, has ballooned to $14.2 billion. Congress never authorized a single dollar of it. The president moved the money through emergency executive orders, raiding the defense budget and FEMA disaster relief funds. Sources on the Armed Services Committee say the diversion of $3.1 billion from military readiness accounts has left the Pacific Fleet operating at 74% capacity during the most volatile period in the Taiwan Strait since 1996. Republican defense hawks are furious. Senator Roger Wicker reportedly told colleagues that the Greenland spending is the single most reckless misallocation of defense resources in my 30 years of public service. Here is where it gets worse. The fourth crisis is the legal implosion. Trump's ongoing civil and criminal legal battles have reached a convergence point that is draining the party's resources and dominating every news cycle. The $464 million civil fraud judgment in New York, which we have discussed at length, remains unresolved. The bonding company that was securing the appeal is teetering on the edge of insolvency due to its exposure to Japanese commercial debt. If the bond collapses, the state of New York can begin immediate asset seizure proceedings. Simultaneously, the federal cases have produced a steady drip of revelations that are poisoning the party's brand with suburban voters. Legal fees across all cases have exceeded $187 million, much of it paid from political action committee funds that would otherwise go to congressional campaigns. Every dollar spent on Trump's lawyers is a dollar not spent on competitive House races in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. The RNC's political director reportedly presented a slide at last week's strategy meeting showing that the legal fund diversion has already cost the party an estimated 14 competitive seat opportunities in the House. 14 seats. That is the difference between a majority and a minority. The fifth crisis, and this is the one that brought everyone to the table this morning, is the fracture within the caucus itself. 3 Republican senators have publicly broken with the president in the last 2 weeks. Senator Lisa Murkowski gave a floor speech calling the administration's economic response dangerously inadequate. Senator Susan Collins issued a written statement demanding an independent review of the Greenland expenditures. And most devastatingly, Senator Thom Tillis, a reliable Trump ally from North Carolina, went on Face the Nation last Sunday and said, "I was elected to represent my state, not to be a rubber stamp for policies that are failing my constituents." That was the earthquake. Tillis is not a moderate. Tillis is not a MAGA skeptic. Tillis is a mainstream conservative who won re-election with Trump's endorsement. When Thom Tillis breaks, it signals that the floor is giving way beneath the party establishment. Sources say that within hours of the Tillis interview, Thune's office began making calls. The meeting was organized in less than 48 hours. The speed tells you everything about the urgency. So what is actually happening inside that locked room right now? According to 2 sources with direct knowledge of the agenda, the meeting has 3 objectives. The first is what insiders are calling the triage assessment, a brutally honest evaluation of the party's chances in the November midterms under current conditions. The second is a discussion of what one source called distance strategies, meaning formal mechanisms for Republican candidates to separate themselves from the president without triggering a full-scale war with the MAGA base. The third, and this is the explosive one, is a preliminary conversation about invoking Rule 11 of the RNC Charter. Rule 11 governs the party's obligation to support its nominees and office holders. In its current form, it essentially mandates that the RNC direct its resources towards supporting the sitting president. But Rule 11 can be amended by a two-thirds vote of the full committee. If leadership can build enough support, they could theoretically modify the rule to allow the RNC to redirect funds away from the White House and toward individual congressional campaigns. This would be a financial decapitation. It would not remove Trump from office. It would not impeach him, but it would cut off the institutional money supply, the RNC's fundraising infrastructure, its data analytics, its ground game operations, its voter contact databases. All of it would be redirected to saving the congressional majority. The president would be left to fund his own political operation with whatever personal resources he has left, which, given the legal bills and the asset exposure, may not be much. But here is the catch. Rule 11 modification is not just a procedural maneuver. It is a declaration of war. The moment the Republican National Committee votes to redirect resources away from a sitting Republican president, it is an official acknowledgement that the party has lost confidence in its own leader. There is no walking that back. There is no spin that covers it. Every political analyst, every cable news anchor, every foreign government watching will interpret it the same way. The Republican Party has abandoned Donald Trump. Sources close to the president say his reaction to the meeting has been volcanic. He has reportedly called Thune a traitor and Johnson a gutless puppet. He threatened to endorse primary challengers against every senator who attended. He told aides he would create a new political party, the MAGA Party, and take his 74 million voters with him. But here is what the sources inside the meeting room understand that Trump apparently does not. The voters are already leaving. The internal polling shows that Trump's core base, the voters who would follow him into a third party, now represents approximately 29% of the electorate. In 2020, it was estimated at 38%. In 2024, it was closer to 34%. The base is shrinking. The diehards are getting older. The young conservative voters, the ones the party needs to survive long-term, are overwhelmingly opposed to the president's handling of the economy. Among Republican voters aged 18 to 34, his approval rating is 19%. That is not a base. That is a funeral procession. Let us talk about the psychology of what is happening to Donald Trump right now, because the mental dimension of this crisis is as important as the political mechanics. For 60 years, Donald Trump's identity has been built on one foundational principle. He is the man who cannot be defeated. He survived bankruptcies. He survived the Access Hollywood tape. He survived 2 impeachments. He survived 4 indictments. Every attack made him stronger. Every enemy became a prop in his mythology of invincibility. But this is different. This is not an external enemy. This is not a Democratic prosecutor or a liberal judge or a hostile media outlet. This is his own party. These are the people who knelt before him. These are the people who wore his hats, parroted his talking points, and begged for his endorsement. When your enemies betray you, it confirms your worldview. When your allies betray you, it destroys it. Sources who have spoken with the president in recent days describe a man who oscillates between volcanic rage and stunned disbelief. He reportedly told one confidant, "They would be nothing without me. I made every single one of them." The narcissistic wound of being excluded from a meeting of his own party is, according to a former White House psychologist who spoke to the press on Background, potentially the most destabilizing event in his psychological history. This is not hyperbole. For a personality structure built entirely on dominance and control, the loss of control over his own political apparatus is an existential crisis. It is an identity death. Now, let us push this to the worst-case scenario. What happens if Trump retaliates? The most dangerous option on the table, and sources say it has been discussed inside the West Wing, is a full-scale purge of party leadership. Trump could use his social media platform to call for the immediate removal of Thune as Senate leader. He could demand that every Republican who attended the meeting face a primary challenge. He could direct his supporters to withhold donations from the RNC entirely, effectively bankrupting the party apparatus. This is the Samson option. If I cannot control the temple, I will pull down the pillars. The historical precedent is chilling. In 1912, Theodore Roosevelt denied the Republican nomination, split the party by running as a third-party candidate under the Bull Moose banner. The result was catastrophic. Woodrow Wilson won with just 41.8% of the popular vote. The Republicans lost both chambers of Congress, and the progressive wing of the party was destroyed for a generation. If Trump executes a similar split in 2026, the math is devastating. Republican candidates would be forced to compete in a three-way race against both Democrats and MAGA insurgents. Models run by the Cook Political Report suggest that a split of even 8% of the Republican vote toward a Trump-aligned third party would flip between 45 and 60 House seats and at least 7 Senate seats to the Democrats. That would not just be a wave. That would be an extinction event for the Republican congressional majority. What does Putin see when he watches this unfold? What does Xi Jinping calculate? They see a superpower tearing itself apart from the inside. They see a president who cannot control his own party, cannot stabilize his own economy, and cannot project coherent authority to the world. The Greenland fiasco already signaled American overreach. The Japan crisis exposed American financial vulnerability. And now the party split advertises American political dysfunction on a global stage. Sources at the Pentagon say that Chinese military planners have accelerated their timeline for Taiwan contingency operations based on assessments of American political paralysis. Whether that is accurate or not, the perception of weakness is itself a strategic threat. Every day that the Republican Party spends fighting itself is a day that America's adversaries gain confidence. The sheriff is not at the door this time. The family is fighting over who gets to hold the keys while the house burns down. Here is what the founders feared. Not a king, not an invasion, not even a civil war. They feared faction. James Madison wrote in Federalist No. 10 about the dangers of a republic consumed by internal division. He warned that when a faction's interests overwhelm the common good, the republic itself becomes the casualty. We are watching Madison's nightmare unfold in real time. A sitting president is at war with his own party. The party is at war with its own voters. The voters are at war with an economy that is evaporating their retirement savings at a rate of $1.3 billion per day in aggregate household wealth destruction. This is not a political crisis. This is a systemic crisis. This is the stress test of the American Republic, and right now, the structure is groaning under the weight. Consider the constitutional paradox. The 25th Amendment was designed for a president who is incapacitated, who is physically or mentally unable to discharge the duties of the office. But what about a president who is politically incapacitated? A president whose own party has concluded that his continued leadership is an active threat to their survival. The amendment does not cover that. The Constitution does not cover that. There is no mechanism for a political party to recall its own president. There is impeachment, but that requires democratic cooperation and the kind of bipartisan consensus that does not exist in 2026 America. The Republicans are trapped in a room with no exits. They cannot support him without losing the election. They cannot abandon him without losing the base. They cannot impeach him without losing their identity. Every door leads to a different catastrophe. Watch what happens in the next 72 hours. Watch for the statement that comes out of that conference room. If it is bland and procedural, it means they blinked. If it includes the phrase independent path or candidate-centered strategy, that is the code language for formal separation. Watch for Thune's press conference. Watch his eyes. Watch whether he takes questions. Watch for the donor calls. If the Koch network activates independently, if the Club for Growth begins funding candidates without RNC coordination, the split is operational, not just theoretical. Watch Trump's social media, not for the rage that is guaranteed. Watch for the names he does not mention. The people he does not attack are the people he fears. And most critically, watch the Japanese markets when they open tonight. If the Nikkei drops below 28,000, the global financial contagion enters its next phase. And every political calculation inside that conference room becomes 10 times more urgent. The money is the oxygen. When the money dies, the politics suffocate. We are witnessing something that has no modern precedent. A political party is holding an emergency meeting to discuss how to survive its own president. The man who demanded loyalty is receiving mutiny. The man who punished dissent is watching rebellion spread through the ranks like contagion. Whether this meeting produces a formal break or a temporary truce, the damage is permanent. The veil of unity is shredded. The illusion of invincibility is gone. Every Republican candidate in every swing district now knows the truth. The emperor has no clothes, and winter is coming. For one man sitting in the White House, scrolling through his phone, watching the names of his allies file into a room he was not invited to enter, this is the thing he feared more than indictment, more than impeachment, more than prison. This is irrelevance. And for a man who has spent his entire life demanding to be the center of every room, being locked out of this one may be the wound that never heals. Let us get technical about what Rule 11 modification actually means in practice, because this is the specific mechanism that could sever the financial lifeline between the Republican National Committee and the sitting president. Under the current RNC charter, the committee is obligated to support the party's nominees at every level, including the presidency. This means data sharing, field operations, digital advertising infrastructure, voter file access, and coordinated expenditure authority. The RNC spent approximately $310 million in coordinated support for the Trump campaign in 2024. That money paid for micro-targeted ads in 7 swing states. It funded 1,400 field organizers. It maintained the voter contact database containing 190 million individual profiles with behavioral and psychographic overlays. Cutting that off does not just reduce Trump's political power, it amputates it. Without the RNC's data infrastructure, the president's political operation would be flying blind. No targeting models, no precinct-level turnout projections, no coordinated messaging with down-ballot candidates. He would be running a 20th century operation in a 21st century battlefield. The cost of rebuilding that infrastructure independently is estimated at $85 to $120 million, money that does not exist in Trump's depleted war chest. The legal bills have consumed the reserves. The donor flight has killed the pipeline. And the Japan-linked market collapse has depressed the value of every asset he could leverage for borrowing. He is politically bankrupt before the financial bankruptcy even arrives. There is another dimension to this that nobody in the mainstream press is discussing: the intelligence implications. A president who is at war with his own party's congressional leadership loses access to the informal intelligence channels that have always supplemented the formal briefings. Committee chairs share sensitive assessments with presidents they trust. They provide early warnings about legislative threats. They relay what foreign ambassadors are saying in private meetings on Capitol Hill. When that trust breaks down, the president becomes informationally isolated. He is still getting the CIA briefing every morning. But the political intelligence, the human intelligence that comes from having allies embedded in every committee, every caucus meeting, every donor dinner, that goes dark. Sources at the NSC say this information gap is already measurable. Decisions are being made with incomplete political context. Policy proposals are being sent to Capitol Hill without advance coordination. The machinery of governance is grinding because the lubricant of trust has evaporated. Subscribe. Stay tuned. The Republican Party is at war with itself, and the casualties have not even begun to be counted. The conference room door is still closed. But what comes out of it will reshape American politics for a generation.